We're being joined by Mr. David Dunn, who's joining us live from Birmingham. Mr. Dunn is a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. Now, Professor Dunn, thank you very much indeed, sir, for speaking to us here in WION. What do you make of Benny Gantz's visit to the United States, where it appears that Benny Gantz's visit has not been approved by Netanyahu? How is this possible?
I think what we're seeing here is an attempt by Gantz to indicate to the wider Israeli population that he is an independent voice from the government, although he's part of a national unity government, that actually he doesn't want to be associated with all the decisions of that. So it's a way of showing his independence, of showing that there is an alternative to Netanyahu, which of course he represents. And it also gives him the chance, once he's back from Washington and London, to speak with more authority, having had those conversations in the cabinet meetings, and to put forward alternatives to those which Netanyahu have been pushing. So it's a way of trying to strike a different pose, to create visible difference between himself and the Prime Minister, which of course is why Netanyahu doesn't like it.
Now, it's interesting that you point out that Benny Gantz wants to show himself off as someone with a certain independent bent of mind and independent authority as opposed to Netanyahu. But the question is this: they are a part of this unity government. Do you think that this rift can actually have consequences for Netanyahu's government? Do you think Benny Gantz will still continue to go along with Netanyahu if he decides to carry out the ground incursion into Rafah?
Well, that of course is a really important question, and and Washington, of course, have agreed to see him as a way of putting pressure on Netanyahu from the inside rather than from the outside. The Americans have tried through Blinken and through conversations directly with Biden to try and put pressure on Netanyahu to change tactics on a whole variety of things, on aid to southern Gaza, to the military action that it's planning to take, on the tactics it's used, and they seem to be having little effect. So clearly the Americans are happy to engage with Gantz as a way to create another channel to put pressure on Netanyahu to do things differently. And it may be that actually Gantz may break with Netanyahu if Netanyahu insists on going ahead despite the pressure to do things differently from the Americans.
I think that's interesting. And also my final question to you. You know, a lot of criticism has been leveled against Netanyahu, saying that he's continuing with his war in the Gaza Strip, essentially for his own political survival, despite the staggering death toll of 30,000+ Palestinians who've been killed. What do you make of that criticism? Is it now Netanyahu who's now waging this war all on his own, just for his political survival?
Well, certainly there are many people who argue just that. Netanyahu was someone who actually prided himself on being Mr. Security, and yet he's the one who was held mostly responsible by the Israeli people for the massacre on October 7th. And many people also suggest that the reason that he is dragging this war out and taking this maximalist position is in order to try and delay the reckoning that will come over those events in October. And of course, he's also facing criminal charges. So the longer he stays in charge of a war, the longer that he stays in charge of a national unity government, the longer he puts off that reckoning. And many people see his motivation as being influenced by that.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Dunn, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.